It's now time for our International Media Watch, for which James Creedon joins me in the studio. Hello, James.
Good evening, Rebecca.
So there's been a lot of debate, of course, about whether these pictures of Colonel Gaddafi, his dead body, should have been broadcast.
Absolutely, and there's been a lot of discussion, I suppose, especially seeing as the heat of the moment has died down somewhat, on how it was covered by international news channels, I suppose, such as our own, who pretty much universally chose to broadcast those pictures. And indeed, as we can see here online, newspapers who had a lot more time to reflect, they had until the following morning to reflect, I suppose, and a lot of them came out this morning with those brutal images. You can see The Sun here, The Daily Telegraph and many other newspapers who decided to broadcast those gory pictures of Gaddafi's final moments. And you can see this tweet here, a lot of people saying, well, how can parents explain to young children why pictures of a terrified man being beaten to death are on the front pages? Now, in the Atlantic Wire over in the US, they're trying to reason, I suppose, trying to figure out what the rationale was by international news channels to go with those pictures. They say many stories in the Middle East have a lot of uncertainty about them. And the photos, at least, especially because of the sometimes lack of reliability of what the National Transitional Council would say, we heard that there were maybe 5 different versions of Gaddafi's end in terms of how they told the story. That the photos and the video pictures seem to verify the truth, or at least the photo and the video seem to corroborate each other.
That's the tricky thing, piecing it together, isn't it?
Exactly.
So is it in the public interest?
Absolutely. They were trying to determine proof. And so I suppose that's their argument. Now, if you go to one of the French newspapers, 20 Minutes, they spoke to a history of photography professor, Michel Poivert. He says a photo is no longer proof. A photo can be in its details and its date. It can be changed. Exactly. So the more badly taken a photo is in some respects, the more credible it is, because it seems to be something that's quite authentic. Also, the gorier the picture in some ways, that is also lends a certain amount of authenticity to it. He does point out, though, that you don't see pictures of dead soldiers in the state. He questions the ethics of putting photos like this out there, and he says that this is a political image. Now, if we go to a Reuters columnist by the name of Jack Schaefer, he says that you can find images of what happened to Gaddafi all over the internet. They were online within moments of their becoming available on social networks, on social media, and on the internet. So really, this debate within newsrooms over broadcasting these pictures is now quaint, and the rules of the game have simply changed. He says that the old debates resemble the pointless acts of paternalism a dad might inflict on his 24-year-old son who moved out 3 years ago.
It's quite reminiscent, though, of the debate surrounding the death of bin Laden as well. And some of those images were fake, so I think it's probably one we should be having.
Indeed.
Now, some African headlines were they even mourned him, didn't they?
Absolutely. You can see this Ivorian newspaper, L'Intelligent d'Abidjan, a horrible death. They say in their editorial he'd have been better off killing himself to avoid the indignity of his end. In this way, he could have died a hero. Elsewhere, you see in this Malian newspaper, Le Républicain, a martyr, not a coward, they say, and they say he died a hero. And you can see that across a number of different African newspapers. Of course, he was known as the King of Kings.
And he did invest a lot of money in African countries.
Absolutely. Built mosques in Niger and other countries such as that. So, you know, he wasn't universally reviled.
Thank you very much for all of that, James Creedon, and that's this edition of Media Watch.